Okay, so I think we'll kick off again as we have lots more inspiration to come and no time to waste. We're a couple of minutes ahead of schedule, which is wonderful. So without further ado, our next speaker is Sister Angela Reed, Head of Mercy Global Action, the Justice Arm of the Mercy International Association. Welcome, Sister Angela. Sister Angela is a graduate of the School of Global, Urban and Social Studies at RMIT University in Melbourne, Australia, where she completed a PhD on human trafficking. While living in the Philippines, Sister Angela focused her research on giving voice to Filipino women who'd been trafficked for sexual exploitation. Previously, she was a lecturer for the Master of Social Work at RMIT University and a coordinator at a women's safe house in Melbourne, where she encountered many women and children who were experiencing violence and abuse. Over the years, Sister Angela has integrated her professional background in education, social work, and theology to adopt an interdisciplinary approach to research, service provision, and public advocacy. Her main area of focus is gendered violence and particularly human trafficking. Sister Angela, thank you for joining us from Australia.
Sorry, Julia, the interpreters ask the speakers to speak a little bit slowly, including yourself.
Of course, I shall practice what I preach. Sorry about that.
Thank you so much, Julia. And I hope I can speak slowly enough for the interpreters, not only to pick up the English, but the Australian accent. So I want to begin by saying thank you to the speakers, the sisters who spoke before me. Sister Norma, I'm very touched by the way you spoke about the people you work so closely with. And I felt very much you are a storyteller. And I like to think that I'm a storyteller too. And it's only through the art of storytelling that much of our advocacy can take place. I'm going to share my screen now. Is that okay? Wonderful. So I'm really going to take the time to speak about women's advocacy as a prophetic act of, just got to move, a prophetic activity of the church. Oops, sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble moving my presentation along. So for just this small amount of time this morning, I'm going to talk about what I understand as advocacy and present the Mercy advocacy model, as well as share some resources from the Mercy Global Action Office, of which I head up, and then ways to move forward. So what do we mean by advocacy? There have been many definitions today and I found them really helpful. I'm going to share one from the World Council of Churches that came out of their meeting in 2009. And they state advocacy is a prophetic activity of the churches in which we accompany and support our sisters and brothers who struggle mightily for justice and peace in the context of injustice and violence against fellow human beings and the rest of creation. Advocacy involves speaking up for those who are silenced, and I heard that so clearly from the sisters who've spoken before me. In efforts to rectify injustice, it demands our engagement with the issues and initiatives of those who struggle for life, justice, equity, rights, and peace. Advocacy is indeed a mission activity of the church in the world, and it's one way in which the church participates in its ongoing mission. Sister Joan Chittister, who has also been mentioned before, a wonderful prophet of our day, I believe, says, what this world needs most from us right now is commitment to a spirituality that is prophetic as well as private, that echoes the concerns of the prophets who have gone before us. She says, while we keep our heads down, our mouths closed, our public reputations unblotted, thanks to the silence we keep in the face of great public issues of the day, the pillars of society erode in front of us. She says, the silence is deafening as the world waits for those on the edge of the crowd to speak up, to speak out. And I'm so reminded of the woman at the well, speaking up and speaking out, and drawn to that image very much as a woman advocate. Anne Lamont, an American writer, describes what she believes is mercy. And of course, that's particularly relevant for me and my congregation as a Sister of Mercy. I'm going to read you what she describes as mercy. And I wonder if you could think about advocacy also being the same as mercy. So she says, mercy means compassion, empathy, a heart for someone's troubles. It's not something you do. It is something in you, accessed, revealed, or cultivated through use, like a muscle. And so I sometimes say, how's your mercy muscle? Sometimes it feels stronger some days than others. So I want to just share Mercy Global Action is the office that I head up, and this is the social justice arm of Mercy International Association. And we're located in New York, opposite the United Nations headquarters. And our work involves working with the United Nations, but also with many other international organisations, and of course working together in coalitions with many religious and many faith-based organisations, as well as others that hold similar values. In 2016, the Sisters of Mercy, in the Year of Mercy, declared by Pope Francis, underwent a process of reflection in which they undertook theological reflection in the light of social justice. And if you're interested in looking at this model further, you can go to the Mercy World website. What came up from the many reflections and discussion groups were many, many issues. We've named them today and we could keep on naming them. You can see that they're issues of displacement of persons and degradation of earth. What we did as a justice unit was to work on the mercy, justice, advocacy approach. So you'll see here this graphic which shows the importance of the experience of earth and people. Often people think, oh, advocacy is about taking banners in walks, writing letters and protesting and rallying. And yes, that is part of advocacy. But we can never, ever do any of that kind of work unless we are in close proximity to the people and earth. Reverend Barber of America talks about the power of proximity, and I couldn't help being reminded of that when Sister Norma was speaking. The power of proximity, never losing sight of the people with whom we work and walk alongside. And significantly, self-reflection. Once again, I heard Sister Norma say that she was asked to unpack herself. And I think that's such a good way of describing what self-reflection involves when we're working in justice. We have to unpack some of the preconceived ideas, assumptions and notions that are there. And sometimes we have to recognise our own position of privilege and really try and understand the position of those who are perhaps marginalised, discriminated, displaced. Alongside that, we have numerous tools for advocacy. And you'll see there that we've got all of those listed. And again, you can find those on our website. But who is advocacy for? Well, I think it's really important that we recognise that we work with, not for, those oppressed and those experiencing injustice. One of the main challenges for me has been to bring the voice, particularly of women who have been trafficked, to the United Nations and to other international forums to talk about their experience and to give voice to their experience. Some images here that just represent some high-level meetings and then some really grassroots work, engaging with the people. We've undertaken over the last couple of years some significant research. Inherent Dignity, which is an advocacy guidebook that is steeped in the experiences of young women who have been trafficked for sexual exploitation. Our latest publication is Hope in a Time of Pandemic, which reflects on the work of Mercy throughout the world during COVID, and still very much with us, and acknowledges the many issues that have come out and been brought to bear in this time of pandemic. You'll notice we also have put out a publication on water and sanitation, recognising that all of these issues are interrelated. And then the publication I Have a Voice. All of these you can Google online and get, but the I Have a Voice is the actual words of women who have experienced trafficking. I'm conscious of time, so I'll finish up, but Melly Lenario, you'll see there is a survivor advocate of human trafficking, and she has spoken at the United Nations and has definitely, I believe, been empowered. And I really appreciated Sister Eilish's definition of empowerment, of giving strength and confidence to do something. And that's certainly been articulated by Melly. So back to finish with the wonderful wisdom of Sister Joan Chittister. Shall we do something to reshape the heart and soul of the worlds we inhabit? Or shall we do nothing and claim that we were powerless in the world? Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Sister Angela, for that beautiful presentation. I have to say I'm biased because my background is in communications, but I also feel strongly that advocacy is very much about storytelling. And I feel like it's such a privilege to be a storyteller in this world, not just so that we can tell our own stories, but also, as you said, to really raise the voice of those who are on the edge of the crowd, which I love as an image, and to advocate with them and not just for them, which is one of the key tenets of our project here at UISG. So thank you. I found that really inspiring.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So next, we're going to hear from Sister Donatus Lily, who's joining us today from Kenya. Hello, Sister Donatus. Sister Donatus of the Congregation of Our Lady of Charity of the Good Shepherd is the Vice Coordinator of Religious Against Human Trafficking and also a former designate to the UN's Economic Commission for Africa. Her academic background includes a bachelor's degree in pastoral counselling and a master's degree in counselling psychology, as well as qualifications as a therapist, trainer, and certified assessor for the Kenyan government. Her research activities in Kenya have focused on human trafficking, child marriage and forced marriage, and the deadly impact of fistulas. Sister Donatus has extensive experience supporting the inclusion of faith-based organizations in advocacy activities and raising awareness with grassroots communities across Africa. She's been involved in the adoption of the Global Compact for Migration and in efforts to improve African land ownership policies with a particular focus on addressing the root causes of migration and human trafficking. Sister Donatus, hello, and thank you for joining us. I don't think we can hear you. I don't know if that's...
No.
Okay. Oh my God.
Brilliant, that's better.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry for that. I hope I'm audible enough.
Yeah, we can see your presentation. Could you please make it start the presentation?
Okay, thank you. You can see the presentation now?
Yes, can you make it as a presentation?
All right, let me try.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, sister.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much, Guilia, for that. And I'm so honored really to join this forum today. And I just want to echo the words of Sister Sheila about gathering information and linking with non-state actors to help us connect globally and make us have impact in the world of today. So I came up with just these few points that advocacy is fitting into the life, has to be fitting into the life and mission of religious women. And with this, generation after generation, religious life was seen as a prayer tool and remedy for every issue. And these religious congregations were formed and delivered services in silos within their convents and monasteries. This led to a duplication of services, and thus our impact was hardly felt in a consumerist, competitive world that has led to abuses of human rights. While each congregation continues to offer service in alignment with its charism, the mantra for the UN agenda to meet the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals is leave no one behind. The church, and especially the religious, cannot be left behind working on their own silos. To increase their impact, the religious ought to adopt synergies and galvanize more efforts in lobbying our states to adopt just laws and policies that consider the less fortunate and provide access to justice. Furthermore, we have been called by the Holy Father to stand with the marginalized, not being their voice, but rather building capacity for them to voice their own concerns about their dire situation. This is a universal call, and many congregations have come up together to form coalitions such as the Religious Against Human Trafficking, the Talitha Kum, Santa Martha Group, and many others. The church has realized that it's no longer the time for Moses and Aaron to continue being mouthpieces for the vulnerable. It's now time to pass on the mantle, enabling the vulnerable to state their issues. It is time to realize that dishing out money and food is not the solution, but rather empowering individuals to voice their own solutions. Permit me at this onset to share some advocacy strategies that may help us going forward. These equally are my own recommendation for us as religious orders that will enable us to survive in a global world of consumerism so that we can make impact in future generations. The first is linkages with the UN. In this, congregation can be accredited as observer states or accredited with special status. And in this, it helps the congregations to be able to make statements wherever it is necessary. And this also includes the United Nations Environmental Program. First, to member with the social protection flows. We have the global social protection, which trickles down from the global right into the national. And in this helps congregations to develop social laws and policies together with their states that factor in gender equality in all spheres of life, and also issues to do with grant transfers for the aged, the vulnerable children, orphans, and persons with disabilities. We could also be members with women major groups and NGO major groups that are also accredited to UN. And this helps us to participate in regional consultations, development of regional and national position papers on thematic areas, issues to do with food security, gender equality, and many others. On the capacity of the human rights mechanism, we could also participate in treaty bodies like the Convention on the Elimination of Discriminations Against Women, that's CEDAW, the famous CEDAW, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the Convention on the Migrants and their Families. We could also participate in the Universal Periodic Reviews, and this is a state-driven, but we can also develop reports so that these reports can be featured during the reviews in a particular situation. And that helps in lobbying member states to ratify national and international agreements that they have not ratified, and also participate in the Global Compact for Migration that was adopted in Morocco 2018. That the Global Compact Migration has 23 objectives, and among those, we have objective 2.5 that are very key, that help states to work on issues that drive persons live from their own countries to other countries in search for better pastures. And now I would like to share my very personal experience. I've been involved in the linking grassroots ministries in 10 African countries and 3 islands, Reunion, Mauritius, and Madagascar. I was involved in helping Mauritius develop the Voluda National Reviews during the VNL, which was presented to the high-level political forum. I also participated in the review for Kenya in 2017 and 2020, together with other non-state actors and the region, the national designate. I was involved in the adoption of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, focus being on sustainable development, creating awareness within ministries, and developing focal points and conduct towards contribution of the VNR for Voluda National Reviews. Being a member of the women major groups, which I've just mentioned, and this helps in developing of position papers as a region, but not as a region as such, also bringing in the voice of the person in the grassroots. And also I personally attended the high-level political forum in 2017, and we were involved in making a presentation on side events, working from development of papers and involvement of moving from poverty to prosperity. And that is something that is also ongoing. And also I contributed my first experience in gender equality during the Commission on the Status of Women for 62. And also later in the Regional Generation Equality Forum held in Addis Ababa in 2019, and actually was the key speaker for the faith state actors within Africa, bringing in the voice of all the religions. Of course, it's something quite major, but just touching a few things. And also, of course, I was involved in issues of human rights mechanism in Geneva during the review for Kenya. That was 2017. And so it was the issue of fistula for women and girls. And of course, harmful practices. So these are just the developing of written statement, oral statement, and also as a joint forum. And on adoption of the GCM, which I've just mentioned. And just to say something again, in the regional, African regional forums for sustainable development goals. And in this way, this is the structure that the Religious for Good Shepherd have been working on. And this is something very important. We can begin like we have a regional congregational representative to the UN, then that trickles down to a regional designate in each region. And then it goes down to a country representative. And in that way, all the sisters involved in the ministries, their voices, whatever they are doing is heard. So it is bringing right from the grassroots, helping the women, the girls that we are working with to voice on their ideas, other than us doing it for them. Thank you so much. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Donatus, for sharing your incredible breadth of experience with us and for really giving us an overview of what advocacy can be, what it means to advocate, and how we can take action as advocates at a regional level and at a global level as well. And thank you for reminding us again that advocacy is about empowering others, about a hand up, as we say, and not a hand out. So we're going to move into a more interactive part of this session now. And before we open the floor to our audience at large, I'd like to give Sister Donatus and Sister Angela the opportunity to ask any questions of each other if they'd like to. If there's anything that you'd like to expand on, if you have any thoughts on the presentations that have just been shared, then please feel free to take the microphone now.
Okay, will I go ahead?
Go for it, yes.
Thanks so much, Sister Donatus. We have met each other in New York. It's great to see you online, and thank you so much for what you shared. I am in awe of all the work you do at such a high level, and as well as keeping so closely in contact with the grassroots. I'm wondering, when you talk about all the different like high-level political forums and the UPR process in Geneva, how do you maintain a sense of hope in what must so often feel overwhelming in terms of processes to you?
Thank you so much, Angela, for that comment. And really, it's very key. First, let me say it is quite overwhelming in the first place. But second, there's beauty because I did not work alone. I worked until 2020. I was not working alone. I was actually linking the national representatives together with the global, and me being the middle person. And of course, I would get into the grassroots, like in every country, there's a national representative. And so I would be very much on lookout to see when a certain state is being reviewed. So I would see when is the deadline and when they're supposed to submit the written papers or that report. And in that way, I was also linking with the human rights representative in Geneva. So that helps so much. So what helps so much, let me say, it is the partnership, not my work. but the work of the congregation, not the work of the congregation, but the ministries whereby the sisters are involved so that they bring the voices of that. So I would be involved in the national, if it's about collecting data, helping the sister develop the data, the information, if it's like South Africa, Mauritius, and Egypt, and Sudan, then together would form.
We've lost connection momentarily.
How to participate. So then again, sending the report is not enough. There's the need to send the report, but also follow up. So that's why I personally attended the Universal Periodic Review, knowing that if there's a report, that is a key issue that is within the country.
We're struggling, I think, with our connection.
During this review, they are very lenient to each other. Like I take, for example, if it is Kenya being reviewed, and it's a time for Uganda, which is within East Africa, to give their comment, they'll just say, continue the good work you are doing. Actually, that makes no impact. And that's where we really need to be there to say, no, it's not to continue the good work you are doing, it's point out and say, work on this and give it a timeline. So it's not just about working on it, it's give it a timeline. And within a cycle of 4 years, the same states are supposed to be reviewed. So the observatory statement and recommendation, they are the ones to be given out. So within a period of 2 years, they are supposed to say, this is what we have done. For example, for CEDAW, Kenya was being reviewed and the issue of the trafficked persons. So it was about building houses for these women, because like in Kenya, we didn't have any for the state. We have some, but for NGOs and faith-based organizations. But for some of the NGOs, they would be just like a way of looking for fundraising, not so much as quality delivery. So in that way, we help the country know that, yes, it's not only that state that is giving recommendation, as we have also developed a report and we are supposed to follow up. And that's why it is taxing, because after we have to come back as NGOs, you cannot work on silos, but as NGOs and develop joint report and say, okay, our country, how far have you gone? This is what you have done. We thank you for that. How can we come in again? Again, it's not only tasking them, but complimenting them, but pointing out the loopholes and letting them know that our eyes are wider than theirs. And that is why we have the African statement by Chinua Achebe that says that if a cockroach wants to govern the chicken, it must employ the frog to be its bodyguard. You know what that means? The country, like us as faith-based, we are so few. As congregation, I can't do it alone. And I cannot, sometimes it's very hard, because if it is a individual statement, the state may not take it very serious. But if it is a joint statement, and that's why now we bring in the human rights mechanism to say, this is what is happened. Like the issue of the human trafficking, that's already what we are doing. Thank you so much, Sister Angela. And surely we met, and I hope we met in the future.
Thank you so much. And it's so obvious that you want states to be accountable, not only for the human rights mechanisms to be there, but for their account. You are, really calling them to account is what I hear you saying. So yeah. Not easy.
Yeah, not easy. And thank you.
Sorry, Sister Donatus. I'm going to cut us off briefly because I know we have another short scheduled break for the translators at this point. And I do want to open the floor as well to questions from the audience. So I think what we're going to do now is we're going to take just 1 minute for people to start sending their questions to Sister Donatus and to Sister Angela, or general questions for the session in the Zoom chat. And Patrizia will moderate the Q&A for us. So thank you very much, Patrizia. We probably won't have time for many questions, unfortunately, but we will be saving all the questions in the chat to read through them later, because we really do want to hear everyone's thoughts on advocacy in general and today's topics in particular. We may try and answer a few more questions through the next UISG newsletter, for example, or perhaps even in a future session. So if you have any questions, please do send them in the Zoom chat now. We're going to take a 1-minute pause, and then Patrizia is going to start us off with the Q&A. Thank you.
Julia, I think while we wait for some questions to arrive, there is one for Sheila, and I have one which is general, so perhaps Angela or some other speakers can just comment. I think it's important to highlight which is the role of the sisters who do not work directly at the advocacy level. So which is the role of the sisters at grassroots level for the advocacy? And for Sister Sheila, if she can give us more details on the training program on advocacy. So I think we can start with two questions. Thank you.
Great. Shall we ask Sister Sheila then to answer the first practical question?
Let me just say this much about that. The training program is with Julia. I mean, Julia, you're the one that's the advocacy coordinator. We will be working with them. They will be doing specific training, but we will be looking at the areas where we need to be doing advocacy work and the different kinds of trainings that would be helpful. This is a program still in formation. I'm being brought in and learning what it is about. So I'd have to say Julia has to answer that question, because it's not at this time in my purview, I guess I could say.
Yes.
If I could answer it, I would, but I'm not able to.
You're right, Sister Sheila. I should have said the training program on advocacy is something that we're working on in collaboration with the Laudato Si vision, and of course the vision for the Laudato Si platform, onboarding religious around the world. So it's something that we're hopefully developing throughout the summer with Sister Sheila, and we'll be launching at some point in the new academic year in October, perhaps. So details are to be confirmed, but certainly what we want to do as the advocacy project at UISG is really build capacity for sisters to know how to go out and advocate on whatever they want. So it won't be a training program that kind of teaches advocacy on specific topics. It'll be more of a toolkit, I think it's fair to say, something that can really enable sisters to go out and do their best work independently, autonomously. And I wonder if Sister Angela would like to answer Patrizia's general question, which I second, because it's a big question for us as part of the kind of work that we've done in this first year on the advocacy project. How do we link the work that we're doing on advocacy at a regional level and at a global level with the efforts of sisters who perhaps aren't ready or don't have time, or don't have the kind of at the moment the wherewithal to be involved in, for example, policy making or research, but are concretely active on the ground in all these areas that we're advocating around? How do we link the activism to the advocacy is how I would describe it, and it's a question that I've really been struggling with in a productive, creative way, but it's a tension that's there. How do we bring those things together?
Well, I can attempt to answer it, and it won't be a full answer. But what I believe is that, and I've heard this said so many times from sisters throughout the world, like oh, I don't have time to do advocacy. First of all, I want to say they are advocates every single day, that they are practicing advocacy in their work with groups or women and so on. One of the ways that we've tried to really involve our sisters and Mercy associates throughout the world is to gather the stories. And like I said at the beginning about storytelling, nothing I think is more compelling than the stories. And so wonderful to have the stories firsthand from the women themselves or the people who are experiencing injustice, and for somehow the practitioner, if you like, or the sister working in the ministry, bringing those people forward and empowering them in the real sense of empowering. So I do believe there is no advocacy without that grassroots engagement. And so, as I said, an incomplete answer, but off my head, that's where I'm heading.
Thank you. Yes, and I think the idea that storytelling is that link between the grassroots and the kind of global advocacy. Again, I'm biased, but I really couldn't agree more. I don't know if Patricia has received any other questions in the chat, or I mean, we're doing well on time, but not that well. So we could move on.
There is another question for Donatus and Sheila. I don't know. I can read it. I don't know if we have time to answer. In your advocacy with and for human trafficking victims, some people said that it's time to focus on how to empower survivors of human trafficking, not on how they are exploited. Yeah. What do you think?
Perhaps I could answer this one.
Sure, briefly.
Thank you so much. And yes, it is time to empower the survivor. But I also believe that other than waiting until somebody is trafficked, then you can come to empower them, we need to take the very key areas, and it is sensitization, creating awareness into the grassroots. But very key important, like now, I'm a vice coordinator of the Religious Against Human Trafficking here in Kenya. What we have embarked on as objective one is creating awareness within our religious communities and also going into the grassroots. And we realize that the clergy is very important. If we want to go into the parishes, if we leave the clergy behind, then there's very little impact that is felt. So we are trying to bring the interfaith religious groups. We, like last 2 months ago, we had a workshop of trainers, trying to help them, give them the capacity to know how to identify a victim, a candidate that could be trafficked, and in that way, how to link with the governments. So we had also key representative from the government. The question is creating synergies, trying to bring everybody on board. We had the Muslim, the soup came in the faith. We had all groups, and they committed, they say, this actually they formed a work plan. In that I'm saying already individual organizations, some of them have these programs, like the shelter house, like the church, diocese, they have shelter house, but that is not enough because you don't have to wait. Let us create the awareness from the beginning. And in that way, we have less and less people that are trafficked. And also, like I talked of the Global Compact for Migration, we try to make our countries know that, yes, you adopted this and you signed. So what precautions are you taking? How are you implementing? So that at least they know that we can reduce this. It's a question of rotating around the sustainable development goals. Try to supply, to make sure they have, everybody has enough. It's not that they only choose to go out of their choice, not out of disparity.
Right,
Thank you.
Right. Could I just say something? I just want them to know that I have experience in advocacy. I'm just becoming newer to this program that UISG has had. I've worked very much in domestic violence and sexual assault training and helping change laws, having women become aware that this is not acceptable, and also working in HIV/AIDS, helping to craft that legislation. So I'm just kind of becoming more involved in that area. The situation too about the trafficking, I know in Uganda, they're working on a program where they address their Catholic legislators because there's an international way that young people can leave their country for, like hotels, all these other businesses, but they're not reporting on those accurately. So it's this kind of information in terms of having them be accountable and saying, we want to know what's going on, and offering young people employment so that they do stay in their country. So those are, but we have to go on to the next part, but I'm just saying there's a lot that we have to follow up with more conversations, because this is, you know, where we need to be in dialogue with one another. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sister Sheila, and thank you, Sister Donatus and Sister Angela. And it's really, well, wonderful to feel that there's such a kind of movement for connection. And as you were saying, Sister Sheila, for dialogue, and that's really what's, you know, the fuel that's powering this work that we're doing.